Don't tell everyone else at the 521 conference here, but the fact that you're in this room right now, okay? I believe the Lord loves you more. I'm just saying, okay? You are going to have the favor of God on your life in the near future because you stayed and you're here, okay? And I pray that I've saved the best for last and God speaks to me. Before we get into business and people are trickling in out of the lobby, something your pastor will never do in church, pull out your smartphones because I would love to be your friend. I'm all over social media, so at Sean Lovejoy on Twitter. I'm at Sean Lovejoy 1 on Facebook and Instagram, okay? We also have a Courage to Lead Facebook page that we just launched, at Courage to Lead. And then we have a YouTube channel with like hours of free coaching videos on there, which is, it's youtube.com/Courage to Lead. youtube.com/Courage to Lead. But honestly, you can stumble onto all of that on our website, couragetolead.com. And one of the promises we make on our website, it's a legit promise, is that, you know, the first session is on us. So if you go on there, you tell us, fill out a form, a few basic stats about your church, we'll spend 30 or 45 minutes on a video call with you, kind of talking through your number one issue that keeps you awake at night, all right? First one's on us, no strings attached. Obviously, we'll take a few minutes and say, what does it look like for us to have a relationship with you ongoing? But that's cool if you don't. Many don't. But nevertheless, we've helped you, okay? So I can't do better than offer that. Is that fair? Just to spend a little time with you and get to know you and build a relationship with you. Conferences can be overwhelming. They can be discouraging. I mentioned earlier, you're like, we can't do 3 video screens. And we don't have intelligent lights, and we don't have a hazer. I don't know how the early church ever got by without a hazer, without smoke, you know, but they did. And you can start thinking, you know, it can overwhelm you, and you realize just how badly our church sucks. That's what you think about, you know what I'm saying? So I don't want you to do that today. I really want to drill it down and focus. And whatever you do, I hope you haven't like critiqued me to death. I know, pastors, you're looking up at the lights, you're looking at the video, you're looking at my shoes, you know, you're critiquing everything and critiquing even what I say. But I pray when you look at other churches and other pastors, okay, don't criticize. James just talked about this. Don't criticize everybody that does it a little bit different from you. I can learn something from any pastor, any denomination, any model. I can learn something. So I'm not going to criticize him, her, them for being different than me. That's why the body of Christ is beautiful. We're all different. So today, my prayer would be you just walk away with 1, 2, 3 things, you know, that God speaks to you on and through, and it makes you better. Are you following me? So I really want to just drill it down to like 3 areas right here in this last hour. And then Sean's going to come. We're going to do some Q&A from Grace Church. We're going to do just some Q&A at the end, and then we'll close out. Just kind of 3 areas of focus in your life and in your leadership that can help you lead yourself to the next level. If you're the leader of that ministry, if you're the leader of your church, the bad news is you are the lid on that ministry. The good news is you're the lid. If you get better, everyone and everything else will get better. So stop pointing fingers and, you know, critiquing and criticizing everybody else. Just decide, I'm going to get better. I'm about to get better. I'm going to grow. If I grow, everyone else is going to grow. And then if everybody else grows, that's people, that's the church. The church is growing. And the old legend with Truett Cathy, founder of Chick-fil-A, they were debating at a table, a time when Boston Market was gaining market share on Chick-fil-A. And Boston Market was expanding rapidly across the United States. And down in Atlanta at Chick-fil-A headquarters, some of the executives were freaking out. And it is said it's the only time in Chick-fil-A's history Truett Cathy pounded on the board table. And he said, stop it. We will not have one more discussion in this room about the competition or getting bigger faster. He said, we are going to focus on getting better. If we get better, people will demand we get bigger. And I don't know if that's in the Bible, but it might ought to be. I actually believe it is. Just get better. Just grow. And as you grow, and as you grow the leaders, the church will grow. The community will demand that you add space and add seats if you get better at what you do. So I want to just talk about 3 areas that you can get better. 3 areas of focus to get better and lead yourself to the next level. Number 1, focus on the priorities. Focus on everything can't be equally important. I know everything's broken, but not everything is important in terms of its value of fixing. So, what is most important right now? My pastor, Pastor Chris Hodges, takes their entire staff off campus once a year, pays for it, and they wrestle primarily on staff retreat with one question every year. You ought to write this question down. I love this question. This is the question he asks his leaders every year to wrestle on for 2 days to come down to one answer. One answer they try to get to. Here's the question. What one thing, if it got better, could make the biggest difference in our church? What one thing, if it got better, could make the biggest difference in our church? So this past year, my church, fastest growing church in America right now, okay? 50,000 people in worship. They realized this past year, 2017, that baptisms as a percentage of attendance had declined. And they're like, whoa, 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 whoa. That's what we're here for. To see people come out of that water baptism, having experienced life-changing, go public with their faith. We don't want to reach professional Christians. Can I get a witness? We don't want to swap cheap. We want to watch lost people and see them come to know the Lord. And then begin to recognize we're not talking about water baptism like we used to. So if we started prioritizing and valuing, telling stories, showing video, every way possible, raising the value in our communication, adding that as one of the applications in our sermons weekly, like it could make the biggest difference in our church. This year, baptisms are up by 39% over a year ago in our church. Okay? Just because they got focused on one thing. So don't get overwhelmed by all that's what is most important. And I say for leaders all the time, like there are only about 3 or 4 things you do that add the most value to the ministry. It's the Pareto principle. 20% of your time, produces 80% of the results. So what are your top 3, your top 4 things? You should know that. What are my priorities? If you're the senior pastor, it's spending time with God, it's preaching, and it's vision casting to the leaders. Leadership development. That's like all this other stuff that we get caught up in. For example, I've never had one pastor in all my years of coaching, Anthony, say to me, boy, our church really took off when I started doing more counseling. And yet many, many pastors, when I look at their calendar, is full of counseling. So if our goal is to see people come to know Christ and come to know Him, we've got to focus our time on what's going to produce the fruit we're trying to produce. Are you following me? So go ahead. I'm a big fan of producing what I call performing what I call a calendar audit. Just print off your calendar from the last 2 months. We do this with our leaders that we coach. Where have you been spending your time? The ones I get concerned about is where there are like huge chunks of where like, what did you do that day? And there's just like nothing there. Because if you don't schedule your day, if you don't plan your time, people who are not disciplined in their time will plan your time for you. They will. So you've got to block, schedule, prioritize, put those top 3 or 4 things on your calendar and allow nothing to get in the way. Shut off your phone, okay? I'll be honest with you, I'm a hyperactive, pioneering. I was a church planter. I'm a little bit ADHD. Can anybody identify with that? I probably should be on mild doses of Ritalin. I probably should, all right? But I have beat my body into submission. I've learned to be comfortable being alone, and I've become more focused. There's a great little app you can put on your phone called Forest. I'm not a paid endorser, but I love this app, and I've advocated it to hundreds of leaders. You put it on your phone, and it kind of locks your phone up for you, and it's not that you can't interrupt it. It blocks everything from coming in and out, all notifications, all of that, and it's amazing. But while you set a time limit on it, like I want to be uninterrupted, undistracted for, let's just say, 45 minutes. For some of us, that would be a miracle, okay? And you set it up, and while the 45 minutes is decreasing to 0, a little tree grows. That's why it's called Forest. And you can interrupt it, but you kill the tree. And I can't tell you how many times I've been working and studying alone, and I have a thought, and I'm like, I need to call this person. I need to text this person. I pick up my phone and realize, oh, but I'm going to kill the tree, you know. And it keeps me, okay, focus, you know. And I'll make a quick note. You know, some of you are wearing out your team because you have these crazy thoughts. You're just texting, calling, emailing all the time. You just create this chaos, you know, on your team. And there's this power of becoming more disciplined and realize, and when my team's texting me all the time, the question I want to ask back is, can this wait until our weekly meeting? Because what we want to do is become disciplined and focused together in our time. Everything can't be urgent, because the urgent will crowd out the important. So audit your calendar. Look at how you're spending your time. Put your top 3 or 4 priorities down. That requires discipline. Self-control, the New Testament calls it. And it's a fruit of the Spirit. Let me read a verse to you. Proverbs chapter 25, verse 28. This is from the New Living Translation. He says, a person without self-control is like a city with broken down walls. Now, in biblical times, walls, of course, personified protection. So if you lack discipline, if you lack self-control, you're basically dropping the hedge of protection around you and making yourself open to spiritual attack. So maintain discipline, focus. Be willing to say no to good things, no to the urgent things, so you can say yes to the important things. And don't apologize for it. You've got to have priorities. That's the essence of sort of being mean about the vision, being intentional about how I spend my time. Think about it. Ask you, guys around me, what are the top 3 or 4 things I need to be spending most of my time on that are going to produce the most results? And then you start focusing your life around it, and all of a sudden the church starts growing. Because we're doing those things that produce the fruit in our church. Are you following me? So here's the other encouragement I would give to you. I touched on this, you know, this morning, but did you know ministry is not a 40-hour-a-week job? So it's going to take a lot of time. You're never going to get it done. You're going to have to live with that tension. You have to learn to rest without it all being done. But there is a lot to get done. So I tell leaders all the time, I'd rather rob my sleep than rob my family. So become a morning person. Get up early than everybody else. It's quiet. Nobody ever texts me at 5:30 in the morning. Nobody ever calls me then. I was with Craig Rochelle a couple months ago, back in a green room somewhere. He gets up every morning at 5 a.m., spends time with God, adequate time with God. He reads, he listens to books, audio, and then he starts working every morning at 7 o'clock, and he quits at 4 p.m. every day and goes to the gym. He's home by 5:30 every day. And he's done this for years and years and years and years and years. The most successful leaders I know happen to be the most disciplined, focused leaders I know. The ones whose churches have stopped growing are the less focused and less disciplined leaders. So this is just like growing in the fruits of the Spirit and love and joy and peace and patience and kindness and goodness and gentleness. We also need to grow in self-control. Discipline, focus, priorities, all of that. And then just don't respond to every crisis. I asked Craig in that discussion, I said, what's like your big goal? What's your big priority? What are you working on right now? He said, well, this coming year, I want to initiate more than I respond. I don't want to be always responding and reacting to people's requests and what I want to help decide in my own time with the Lord what's important, and I want that to drive my life and drive my time. It was just another reminder again that just the great leaders, they're always working on this. He's better at just about any leader I've ever known, but he's still sharpening that to make sure he doesn't wait for it to come to him. He's initiating always what he feels like God has on this. And we're primarily a byproduct of our habits. We'll never change until we change what we do daily. So it starts with our calendar. It starts with our time. So focus on our priorities. I grew up in athletics. I'm sort of an average athlete at everything. I was fast for a white guy. I ran a 4.6 40. And so that made me pretty good at basketball, pretty good at baseball. It was hard to drop one in front of me. I was pretty good at football. But honestly, I wasn't a Division I athlete at anything. And if you think about it, if you've got kids involved in athletics or you grew up, active in athletics, when you're young and the skill level is not high, we actually encourage our kids to play 2 or 3 sports. To figure out what you're good at, what you're best at. But think about it, as the child grows, it gets more and more difficult to play multiple sports. By the time you get to high school and the skill level's there, like kids might compete in 2 sports. You get to college, it's probably 5% of athletes that will play multiple sports. When the skill level gets to professional athlete level, you could count them on one hand that's had some level of success at professional athletics. You're talking about Bo Jackson. You're talking about Neon Dion. You're talking about maybe Tim Tebow. Maybe. All right? Most of us are not that good, and you never will be. I think it's very, very true in the church. Early on in your ministry, when you start a ministry, you've got to be a generalist. All right? As the skill level needed increases, as the need of the growth of the church increases, you've got to do less and less and less and less. When you start something, you have to do everything. The longer you do everything, you become the lid on that. So you've got to move from generalist to specialist. This is true for your leaders, your volunteers, your staff, all of that. As the church grows, everyone's got to become more focused. Everyone's got to become more specialized. And it starts at the top, all the way down. As the skill level increases, the need for focus increases. And that's where discipline comes into play. The great theologian, Nick Saban, University of Alabama, said this. He said, discipline comes into play when there's something you know you need to do that you don't want to do it. And the question is, can you make yourself do it? So do the difficult thing first. All right? If you hate working out, which I do it first. If you hate preparing to preach, do it first. If you hate responding to emails, do it first. Whatever you hate the worst, bite the bullet first. Get it out of the way. Knock it off. And then, get on with your day. Do whatever you do. That includes from physical fitness, all the way down. Reading. Just don't let the important get crowded out by the urgent. It will always do that. By the way, if you get discouraged, get depressed, if you want to quit, all that, everything from like eating right to physical fitness to your diet, all of that. When you exercise, endorphins are released in the brain that we know now can offset depression in the brain just by discipline, focus, priorities. So focus on priorities. Look at the person next to you and say, priorities. Priorities. Focus on priorities. You should know what those are, individually and as a church. Number 2, focus on passion. Focus on passion, okay? This is going to be worth your trip. This is why God is going to love you more, because you were here at the last session, okay? Focus on passion. Think about this. When Jesus came on the scene 2,000 years ago, follow me, this is very important what I'm about to tell you. This is worth the price of admission. When Jesus came on the scene 2,000 years ago, He was not teaching some new deep sermon no one had heard before. What was Jesus' first message? I know. Repent, for the kingdom of heaven is near. Those were the first words out of His mouth. Repent, for the kingdom. Well, that wasn't a deep sermon. Jeremiah preached that sermon hundreds of years before. Isaiah preached that sermon. Ezekiel preached that sermon. That was an old sermon. And then the Pharisees are leaning in, a few months, years later. Jesus, what's the most important thing? And we expect Him to, unpack some Hebrew word or something. Instead, He says, love God, love people. That's the most important thing. Right. You can almost feel the disappointment. That wasn't a deep sermon. Moses preached that sermon thousands of years ago. He's preaching the same old sermons out of the same old book that have been preached hundreds and hundreds of years ago. And yet, thousands of people are leaving the sermons of the Pharisees who are teaching out of the same book and flocking to hear sermons over here. Something I see happening in the church every week, every month, right here. They're leaving these sermons and teachings over here and flocking to hear these. Why? The Gospels actually tell us what made the difference between Jesus' teachings out of the same book as what the Pharisees were teaching. It says, because He taught as one having authority, not as the teachers of the law. In other words, Jesus teaching out of the same book, they're both pretty much thoroughly exegetically correct in what they're teaching out of the Bible. There was just a difference in their posture. Something about Jesus when He taught, when they looked in His eyes, they're like, he might be crazy, but he's smoking what he's selling. Can I say that? Like he's legitimately crazy, but he believes everything he's saying. Something about the tone in his voice, the way he sat on that rock, he's up on the edge of his seat, and he's speaking with urgency, with conviction, with passion. He wasn't this nice, gentle, give the company line. We're so glad you're here. Thanks for being here at Grace Church today. Our mission is wah, 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 wah. He's out here on the edge, man. He's crazy. And he's speaking with passion and conviction. These guys over here, Charlie Brown's teacher. This guy, passion, authority. You want to talk about something that could change your worship services this week? Just take the mantle of leadership with passion. Show up with passion. How many of you are honest and self-aware enough to admit you may not be the sharpest knife in the drawer? I feel that way about myself. I'm from Alabama. Okay, us and Louisiana and Mississippi, we're always tied for 48, 49, and 50. Okay? Here's the great news. This is what the early church proves to us. They were unschooled, ordinary men, and they turned the world upside down. You know why? Passion. Passion. You don't have to be the most brilliant, just the most passionate. You do not. I'm telling you, people are attracted to passion. Stephen Furtick, he's crazy. He's crazy. You know why he has a huge following? Passion. Joel Osteen, he's crazy. You know why thousands are flocking to his teaching? Passion. Two totally different models, two totally different leaders. Everywhere you find people flocking to the teaching and the ministries and the culture of a church, it's because the people there have passion. Teach that, cultivate that, live that. This is why we can't work through the Sabbath. This is why we've got to operate out of the overflow. We can't be fatigued. We can't be tired. We can't be overwhelmed. We can't be frustrated leaders. Like when we show up and the lights come on, like we got to bring passion. We can't just fall into it. And I'm telling you, you can teach the same message off your iPad or in your notes. And I'm telling you, by your tone. And by the way, you can't manufacture that. I turn on religious TV sometimes and I'm like, whoa, if that's all they see, we're in trouble. How are we ever going to reach these people? You know what I'm saying? You can't manufacture that. People can see through that. It's got to be legitimate. People have got to believe that this is in you. But then you deliver it. You show up. You maintain that passion in small circles and in rows with your leadership team. All of that. Every day, every week, between Sundays and on Sundays, you focus on passion. Make sure you do that. And people smarter than you will want to work with you. They'll want to be around you. They'll be attracted to your leadership if you'll lead with passion. What does that look like? Well, just don't forget why you're doing what you're doing. Vision does leak, and it leaks in you. It leaks in me. Do you remember why you got into this? You remember that first person you won to the Lord? You literally scared the hell out of them. You couldn't help it, though, because you're just so passionate. And somehow over time, we begin to focus on those who aren't there rather than that one who did show up. You know, and that opportunity to have a spiritual conversation with them. And just come back to your why. Return to your first love. All of that. And then constantly be reminding other people why they do what they do. Because most of what we ask people to do in ministry is not sexy. I mean, we ask people to hand out sheets of paper at the door. And serve in the children's ministry. And park cars, which they could end up being a martyr in the name of Jesus out there. They're going to get flipped off at least once every Sunday out there. They're going to quit if we don't keep reminding them why they're doing what they're doing and instill passion in them. And I'm telling you, if your parking lot people have passion and your greeters have passion and the people who serve the coffee have passion and hand out the worship guides have passion, it's over. By the time they sit down, they're coming back. You can totally blow it in the sermon. They're coming back. The music can be terrible. They'll give it another shot. These people are crazy, but I think they believe this stuff, and they live it, and people will be attracted to that. So believe in yourself. Have some spiritual swagger. It's one of the reasons why I'm such a big fan for coaching, just to have somebody who believes in you and gives you permission. I know you've been knocked down. I know you've had some setbacks. I know you've been kissed on the cheek and stabbed in the back. And somebody left your church and defriended your spouse on Facebook, didn't they? I know all that's happened to you. But Jesus believes in you as much as the day He died on the cross for you. He's still got a plan for you. It's bigger than you have for yourself. So get up off the ground, quit sitting around in the sackcloth and ashes, and let's go. I know something happened 200 years ago and 20 years ago and 2 years ago. Nobody walking in your church this Sunday gives a heck about any of that. They're here today because their marriage is falling apart and they've got a teenager who's cutting themselves and threatening to kill themselves. And they're hoping you'll give them some hope. So get focused off all that. Jesus has called you. I don't know what's going to happen 5 years from now, 7 years from now, who's going to get elected in the midterms. I don't know all that. But I know Jesus has called you to your church this Sunday and He wants to use you. And that's enough. Is it not? So go. Believe in yourself. My big prayer for Christian leaders is that you would begin to believe in yourself as much as Jesus believes in you. You believe in your church as much as Jesus. You think Jesus wants your church to grow? Way more than you do. So just believe in yourself. Get that spiritual swagger back to the time. Go back to the time when you didn't know any better. You'd never been told no, and you'd never been kicked in the gut. Nobody had ever left. And just go back to that and start living for His pleasure and His. It'd turn your church around. They would say this Sunday after services, something's wrong with him, but I like it. I like it. And they'd be energized by it. And then live and teach good news. The gospel is good news, y'all. It's good news, not bad news. It's good news. End with good news. Every week, end with good news. People ought to go out of there like, that's as good as I can dance. People ought to go out of there like singing, kicking, you know. I want the song that ends the worship service, that everybody's walking out. I want it to be 4 on the floor, baby. I want them clapping. I want them kicking their heels. I want them saying, man, I didn't want to come today, but I'm so glad I came. I'm telling you, if you'll live good news and you'll teach good news, you won't have enough room to put people. Yes, in New England. It's happening here. Just identified as the 35th fastest growing church in America, in Boston. Don't tell me it can't happen in your place, in this city, in your community. It can. Take responsibility. Don't be a victim. Just say, yeah, why not here? Why not me? Why not now? Today is the day of salvation. And let's go. So, what do you think about? On a daily basis, do you think about all the problems? You know, or the possibilities? 2 categories of us in the room today. They're the optimists. Who are my optimists? Sort of glass half full people? Sort of just always see the best, believe the best? Okay, I don't understand you. All right? Who are more like me, more objective? Who are the realists in the house? Okay? Keep your hands up. Everybody look around at me. You know what a realist is? It's a pessimist in denial. All right? Hi, my name is Sean, and I'm a recovering pessimist. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. My flesh will have me scrutinize and criticize everybody and everything. And to be honest with you, until God began to heal me of this, Sunday afternoons right after church were the most depressing moments of my week. Because I'm like, everything I did wrong, everything she did wrong, everything he did wrong, everything that went wrong, who wasn't here. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? And all of a sudden you're like this miserable, frustrated, agitated, negative person. And we need to repent of it. Joy is not a fruit of our circumstance, it's a fruit of the Spirit. And I'm telling you right now, one of the biggest lies from hell I ever believed as a church planter, I said, man, when we get to here, it'll be so much easier. When we get to here, it'll be so much easier. I was with Andy Stanley some time back, and he said, Sean, we just spent an entire day trying to figure out how we can lower the exit time off of our multiple campuses. The average time to get someone on the highway after a worship service is 54 minutes. He said, we just spent an entire day trying to figure out how to get it from 54 to 30 minutes. So it's just more, just the complexity, the issues, the drama, the deaths, the stuff the multiple staff issues and the sin as the church grows. It's just going to get more difficult. So if you're not happy now with 10, you're not going to be happy with 100. If you're not happy with 100, you won't be happy with 1,000. It's a mirage. Okay? So you might as well just decide to have joy today. And enjoy the journey. Enjoy the journey. Focus on progress, not perfectionism. All right? You're never going to be excellent. You're never going to be just like Jesus. That's a journey. You're never going to be there. So learn to just celebrate your progress. Hey, you're not where you need to be, but thank God you're not what you were. So begin to celebrate people's progress. Don't get down on everybody. We forget sometimes what we've learned the hard way in our walk with Christ. And we expect everybody else to pick up in 6 minutes, which took us 16 years to develop and grow. So celebrate people's progress. And focus on what went right. And when you talk about, you debrief things, make sure you always begin to celebrate the wins and talk about what went right. And when you coach a team member, always celebrate what they've done well and then lay into them on the other things and sharpen them. And by doing so, man, we create this positive culture. I recommend a book. It's not a spiritual book, but I think it's what the Bible teaches, by Scott Alexander, called Rhinoceros Success. I'm just curious, anybody in here ever read it? So Dave Ramsey recommends this to he requires this for every new staff person that joins our team. He's the one who told me about this. And as soon as he told me that, I'm like, if it's good enough for Dave Ramsey and his entire team, it's probably good enough for me. I went and devoured this book. But here's the thesis of the book. He says every leader should be a rhinoceros leader. A rhinoceros has two primary characteristics. They have 2-inch thick skin, and they wake up every day ready to charge. Can I tell you the secret to success in ministry? Have 2-inch thick skin and just wake up every day ready to charge. Just charge something new. Forget yesterday. And rhinoceroses, they don't see problems. They see locking horns as a good challenge. It's all a matter of perspective. I would correct our team. That's not a problem. Okay, that's a kingdom challenge. A problem would be no one came today. That's a problem. Everything else is just a kingdom challenge. That's not a problem. It's a possibility. If we improve it, it's going to give us potential. It just means we have potential. And we're going to focus on that. Philippians 4:8. Fix your thoughts on what is true and honorable and right and pure and lovely and admirable. Think about things that are excellent and worthy of praise. If it's not all of those, I don't need to think about it, and I don't need to dwell on it, and I don't even need to talk about it. This means other churches. This means other pastors. This means people in my church. I've never heard my pastor, Pastor Chris Hodges, say a negative thing about another church or another pastor. Really respect that about him. And we should not do that as well. We need to work on fixing the things that are negative, but let's not dwell on that. Let's fix our thoughts on what's true and honorable and excellent and praiseworthy and lovely and admirable. All of those things worthy of praise. Focus on that. And focus on that progress, not perfection. Here's 5 signs I'm a perfectionist. Okay, you ought to write these down. 5 signs I'm a perfectionist. 1, I see everything wrong. I see everything wrong. 2, I'm often critical of other things and people. 3, I take things too seriously. One of the things my wife told me back in 2001 when we had this big powwow, she said, Sean, you used to be the life of the party. She said, you never laugh anymore. And I realized like I had lost joy in my life. Pastoring had done that to me. Or I had allowed it to do it to me. And I wanted to laugh. I wanted to become a person who had joy in my life. Don't take life so seriously. Laugh at yourself. Walk into a leadership team meeting and said, did y'all hear what I said this past Sunday? I think I used profanity in the pulpit. Whatever I said. I don't know about you guys, but when I'm in meetings and talks, and I've done it today, my mouth gets ahead of my brain. Does that ever happen to you guys? Yeah. So self-deprecate. Have some fun with yourself. Don't take life so seriously. Smile. Look at the person next to you right now. Just smile. We need to stretch that muscle. When you walk into staff meetings, smile. When you're walking through the lobby, smile. When you're walking down the hallway, smile. When you're at Walmart, smile. It freaks people out these days. Just smile. And you begin to stretch that muscle. It's attractive. Number 4, I tend to dwell on the losses. Don't sit around and think about all the time who's left. First 2 years, we had these little communication cards in the chair. They taught this at Saddleback Church in the early years. They said, man, put communication cards in every chair, put prayer requests on there, and encourage everyone every week to fill out a card, not just guests. That way you'll get everybody's information and you can collect attendance in that way. That's the way they were teaching church planting in the late 90s. And then you compile those And then they would tell you back then look for consistent absentee patterns and call those people who've been absent. So we would sit around a leadership table for 2 years early on in our church, Anthony, and we'd have discussions about everybody that wasn't there and why they weren't there. You want to talk about depressing. And about 2 years later, I had another mentor coach speak into my life. He said, Sean, quit focusing on those who've left. By the way, I've never been able to talk anybody into not leaving. Have you? When they're ready to go, they're ready to go. It's just a matter of whether they just go or they take 20 families with them later. So release them. They don't belong to you. They don't belong to us. They belong to Jesus. And if they stay and they're frustrated with things, it's probably not going to go well with their spiritual life or your church. So just release them. Don't focus on those that have left or leaving. Focus on the ones who've stayed. Some people have stayed. That's a miracle. That's a miracle. If they knew me like I knew me, they'd have left too. They've stayed. God bless, they've stayed. So just think of it as a new church today. What you've got today. You're only responsible for who's here today. And we'll take that new group, however large or small it is, and whatever resource we got, and we're going to be faithful with it. And stop focusing on the past. Forget what's behind, Paul said, and strain toward the prize. It'll set you free. We had moments where I said, no more. We're not going to talk about that deal anymore. That's old news. We've been in sackcloth and ashes long enough. It's time to get up and eat. And we're going forward. And get your church focused on some new thing. Come up with a new thing. Come up with a new goal, a new big day. Get your church focused on the future and off the past. Re-energize them. Cast a new vision. And everybody will get excited. So I tend to dwell on the losses. And then number 5, I lack joy. I just lack joy in my life. The root word for enjoy is joy. And it's the most important choice we can make today. This is the day the Lord has made. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. And I want to close with this passage because right before Philippians 4:8, where he says, fix your thoughts on what is true and honorable and right and pure and lovely. You know, Apostle Paul talks about the importance of just living for today and living as if the time is near. And then in 1 Peter chapter 5, Peter says this. These are my closing words to you before we do Q&A. And Sean, you can get ready to come. We'll do some Q&A. He says this in 1 Peter chapter 5, verse 2. I just want you to listen. Just listen with your heart for a minute. Not with your head, but with your heart. This is God speaking to you today. Be shepherds of God's flock that's under your care, watching over them. Not because you must, but because you're willing, as God wants you to be. Not pursuing dishonest gain, but eager to serve. Not complaining to serve, eager to serve. Not lording it over those entrusted to you, but being examples to the flock. Being the culture you want to build. And when the chief shepherd appears, does anybody disagree with the fact that we're in the last days? When the chief shepherd appears very soon, you will receive the crown of glory that will never fade away. I know you question yourself. I know you doubt your abilities. I know some of you are tired. I know some of you are discouraged. I know some of you are frustrated and agitated. But I'm telling you, the Lord is not done with you. If you can hear me and you still have a pulse, the Lord has a purpose for you in His church. And your best days of ministry can be ahead. If you'll start living for an audience of one, get your spiritual swagger back. Believe in yourself as much as Jesus believes in you. Traction equals satisfaction. Begin to focus again on those things that are important and not just urgent. Re-get that unction in your body and passion and fire in your bones and lead and teach and preach. with zeal and fervor, working for the Lord. And when the chief shepherd appears, you will hear him say, well done. Well done. Good and faithful servant. That ought to encourage you. That ought to encourage you. All right, come on, Sean. We're going to do some Q&A. So I want you to push back, feedback, question, whatever it might be. And we're going to do our best to just contextualize. Try to think in terms of like when you're asking your question, don't go so specific that it's not helpful to more than you. So if you can make it a little bit more general, and we're going to try to answer that way too, so that it's applicable to everybody. And I know Sean, he's going to give his best gold answering these questions.
This is Brian over here. Just raise your hand and he'll get you the microphone. We've only got about 10, 15 minutes for this because we do want to respect your time. Right over here.
Both. Amazon carries that book. So and there's a lot of people who've written on it, blogged on it. I mean, it wouldn't cost you anything to kind of look into the thesis of the book. But I read through that book every year now. Wow. Just devotionally, because we all need to be reminded of that. Just charge the next thing, 2-inch thick skin. Best leaders I know carry those two characteristics. Best churches I know sort of operate that way culturally. They're not worried about what everybody thinks or how everybody's going to respond. They just get up every day, put their pants on, and charge something new. It's powerful. It's powerful.
Other questions? Wait, hang on if you don't mind, because we're recording. If you don't mind speaking to the microphone, Ian.
Sean, it's not really a question, but with everything that Sean's teaching about focusing on your passion and focusing on priorities and being encouraged and things, I know you did this at lunch, but why don't you share what are some ways that some guys that feel like they're out there by themselves, especially here in New England, can find a tribe or a group of guys to actually be encouraged? And I don't know if there's
Me, Sean.
Yeah. What are some of the lanes that you're running in that some of these guys and gals may benefit from?
Yeah, that's great. So I actually run in with a couple of different groups, and the truth is, I think that what God's calling our churches to do in our communities are going to require more of you than what you're capable of doing completely on your own.
Yeah.
Right? All 6 states of New England are the top 10 least religious states in the country. You guys know this. And God put your church smack dab in the middle of your neighborhood for a reason. And it wasn't just to benefit your church. You know what I'm saying? Like, we have a responsibility to start as many other churches, I believe, as possible. And we need a crew around us. So I run with a group of guys. We don't talk about this here at Grace Church because I'm not called by God to build more of my tribe. I'm called by God to build disciples. Would you guys agree? Now, the tribe I'm from is Baptistic, but I don't even run with just Baptist guys either. So I got a couple of Kojic buddies that we hang out with on a regular basis. Truthfully, I think you ought to run with a tribe, but I don't think you ought to be exclusive to any particular tribe, because each tribe has their strengths and weaknesses.
Totally
You'd
agree,
right? So while my background is not Pentecostal, my Pentecostal friends, like they push me on everything. Like, we talk about passion and being sensitive to the Holy Spirit. Growing up Baptist, I'm a little nervous around the Holy Spirit, so I don't really know what to do with him. That's a joke, a little bit. So I went to a Relate conference with the art guys last week. That was fantastic. I've got a lot of good friends that are with Acts 29. They do a great job. You just got to learn the secret handshake to be in that club.
Yes,
is
you
all.
do.
And then, but the group that I'm doing a lot with now is, I actually come from a network of guys here in the state. Anthony's a part of that also, which is the Baptist Bible Fellowship. And then more recently with the North American Mission Board, we do a lot of stuff with. But any one of the guys who are presenters have a network of people. And truthfully, you don't have to join any tribe. Most of the guys who are here are willing to do anything they can to help you do whatever it is that God's called you to do. So you don't have to join our tribe for us to help. I know you can call Anthony. Absolutely.
Yeah, and don't buy into the mentality that when things slow down, I'm going to do relationships. Does it ever slow down in
No,
your
never
ministry?
does. Never does.
That's a lie from the enemy. So I'm a big advocate of blocking off one day a month, a work day, not an off day, a work day. Just one day a month. I'm going to go somewhere. If I have to travel, get in a boat, plane, whatever I have to do, I'm going to go I'm going to go have coffee, lunch with someone that I respect, admire, I like, I'd love to learn more from. And don't let, you would tend to think that, oh, they won't meet with me. They don't have time for me. But you'd be surprised. Don't say no for them. I've been told no a few times, but I've been told yes a few too by some surprising people who'd be willing to meet me for coffee or lunch and developed into 10-year-long friendships. So just block it off, prioritize it, pursue it. It's important.
Yeah, and I think it was Larry Osborne one time that said, he said, never get so big for your britches that you won't make time for a pastor of a church that's smaller than yours. Right? Everybody needs a hand up. And each one of you, I believe, are called by God to reach out to somebody behind you and give a hand down. Right? You need a hand up and a hand down. That guy who's a hand up is going to challenge you on your own walk with God. And truthfully, we need somebody in our life who has access to us, who can call us on our junk that nobody in our church would have the courage to.
Run, Brian.
Brian's one of our stud volunteers. He's a manager of a body or mechanics shop. Took off time from work today to come help today. Can we thank Brian for taking time off work? Homeboy's getting less money this week for his family so that he can serve the rest of us. I thank you, dude.
Thank you, Brian. Sean and Tom, thank you. You talked about having to focus on priorities. Can you share from personal experience some of the things you had to say no to that have been maybe the most difficult for
That's
you
good.
for a variety of reasons? What things you had to say, I just can't do that as pastor, or I just can't do that as a leader
Yeah.
because I'm going to focus on this?
I'll probably offend some people, but we grew a church 3,000 people. We didn't have a women's ministry. We didn't have a men's ministry. We didn't have vacation Bible school. Didn't do student camp. You're like, how do they have church? We said no to lots of good programs and activities and meetings and classes and all of that. Not because they're not good things, but because I know if we start it, we're going to have to maintain it or kill it. And then that group of ladies with the big Bibles and zippers and torches is coming. So I'm just going to take my lick on the front end. And at the end of the day, you got to choose who you're going to frustrate.
Yeah.
Did I frustrate people? Did we lose people because of that? Yes. But I was not going to frustrate God or my family. So I can swallow that. And I had families say, hey, we're not going to be able to leave. We were looking for this and this program, this class, this deal. Or the student pastor. We're used to being in a church where the student pastor comes to all the football games at all 3 high schools. We're used to that. So we're not going to be able to say, it's like, okay, that's not what we're trying to do. I'm not going to kill my student pastor either.
Yeah.
Nobody, none of us. So we just made those kind of tough calls over and over and over again. Personally speaking, I'd have families invite me over for dinner and all this. Well, we've already made a commitment. I went public. I'll be out more than 2 nights a week. So we'll just have to schedule it out a ways, to get this done. I would meet with anyone in our church as long as they were willing to wait, to meet with me. If they couldn't wait, there was always somebody else that could meet with them.
That's right.
So it's those kind of kind no's every day, every week, allowing a little bit of frustration, a little bit of tension. And every week they're coming up to the lobby saying, Pastor, I'd love to meet with you, in that awkward moment. And I always had somebody within the sound of my voice, help, hey, my schedule's pretty crazy right now, but I know so-and-so's here. They would love to meet with you, and having a way to hand some of that stuff off. I can't go to all the football games, but I have raised up 3 champions in the student ministry. One of them works at a body shop, and he's agreed to be the champion for this high school. He's planning on being at every game. So we still had someone do it. It's just I don't have to do it all. I don't have to be at everything and do everything. And the church is healthier. If it caves in because I'm not there, we got a problem.
Yeah.
Does that help? As practical as I know to be.
I think I got room for one more. You guys heard some of the people who like spend resources to bring him in to coach them. You got an opportunity to ask any question you want right now for short money. Yes, sir, Stephen.
I know you mentioned Craig Rochelle a couple times. I know one of the things he talks about is having three things that you spend like 90% of your time on. How have you found, like, how have you been able to kind of, I guess, hone in on just doing a few things well? Like, how do you choose what those few things are?
That's a great question.
Yeah, one is just, if you have some people who work around you or under you, ask your team. That starts with like your spouse. Like, what do you think I do best? What do you think adds the most value around here? Ask the people, what do you feel like I do that adds the most value? They'll surprise you. What are 2 or 3 things you think I'm doing that I don't need to be doing? I mean, if you ask the right questions, you'll get the right answers. And then I like to spend one morning a month where I'm just reevaluating that question all the time, retweaking, making sure that I'm doing. So I just have one morning. I call it my on it morning. One morning a month where I'm just looking at my priorities, making sure they're still in place. And it's like a budget. Like, the thing about financial budgeting is you don't just set up a budget one time and it just runs itself. Like, then you realize you have to have pine straw every year in your beds, and that's something that's going to cost hundreds of dollars, and so you need a little budget for that. So you're adding that, you're tweaking that. So that's the way it is with your priorities. You're managing that and tweaking that and reevaluating that. And here's Craig Rochelle each year sort of reestablishing what that top 3, or I like to be generous and even say 4, things that add them. It's not all you do, but then those get as buckets on your calendar. Those are the most important things. Recurring appointments weekly on your calendar. Your calendar is the most important system in your ministry. As that goes, so everything else flows. So we could just reorder our days and makes all the difference in the world. Time is our most precious commodity, not money. Because we recognize money is a commodity, we don't recognize how precious our time is.
Wow, that's good.
And how powerful reorganizing that can be for our ministries. That's the principle.